Greetings from Tokyo, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and I very much hope that this video finds you well and in very good spirits wherever you are in the world. And today, if you don't mind, I would very much like to continue on with our journey, our discussions, our discoveries, and our explorations with respect to the recent releases made by the Criterion Collection during this year of 2022. That brings us to that title, which has been released by Criterion this year at spy number 1138. And this is the work from the year 2009. And the names of the filmmakers are Josh Safdie and Benny Safdie. And the name of the work is Daddy Longlegs. This is the work from the year 2009, and this has a really fascinating cast, included in which are Sage Ronaldo and Frey Ronaldo, who play Sage and Frey, and then also we have Alex Greenblatt, and we have Ronald Bronstein, who plays Lenny. And it's this story from the Safdie brothers, Josh and Benny Safdie, and it's this film, Daddy Longlegs. Wow, what a film this is. So much to say about this film and my experiences with this film through this Criterion release. So I'll try to articulate those points. One of the places I'd like to talk about is, of course, the plot or story structure of this film, Daddy Longlegs. And I think if we were to try to describe it, we could describe it as a story of the relationship between a father and his two kids, and also through various, say, scenes and exchanges, we figure out that there's a type of family dynamic that's going on in terms of the separation of the parents, the mother and father, in terms of custody, and in terms of a limited period of time of custody of Lenny, the father figure, the Ronald Bronstein character. And so this is this period where we have the focus of these, say, stories or short stories or settings or exchanges or episodes that have some kind of relationship dynamic or reflection of this combination of father and children. So Lenny and his two sons, Sage and Frey. So in this episodic nature, set against the backdrop as vividly portrayed, set against the backdrop of New York during this time, and the people and places and things and the culture and communities of New York and everything that encompasses, we have this intimate story, or these episodes of the intimate relationship between Lenny and Sage and Frey. So it's fascinatingly presented, is it not? Because we have such a, for lack of a better phrase, unfiltered and very direct and raw and honest portrayal of these characters. It's reflected upon in a lot of the supplements later that I'll try to talk about in the latter half of this video, but there is this way in which a lot of the truth of the moment, of the acting moments, is reflected in the performances and in this film itself. There are a lot of moments that are quote-unquote the real reactions of the actors in the moment. Of course, this is also acknowledged as being a film, and there is a sense of the fiction part of this, the fact that this is a story. But there are also elements of the biographical, and that has to do with the performances, that has to do with the way that this film shot. There is a sense of the grittiness. There's a sense of an almost a quasi, I don't want to say documentary feel to it, but maybe a way in which the cinema verite aesthetic is being applied to tell the story. And the story is this relationship between father and children. Now, one of the fascinating and maybe funny things that also can turn quite shocking on an instant is the actual character, say, of Lenny himself, and how he has certain demands in terms of his professional life, in terms of his personal life. That means that he might not always be ever present for his kids at every given moment when they need a parental figure there. And that has to do maybe with certain episodes involving the kids at school, the principal, maybe being at home, being left supervised or unsupervised, as the case may be, and certain choices that Lenny makes based on his own hectic and frantic schedule. Some of those choices might seem to be quite shocking and maybe even negligent. Some of the choices might seem to be very funny and inventive and creative and imaginative. Some of those choices might seem to be very mundane and quote unquote ordinary. But whatever the case may be, however one as a viewer might judge and react and respond to some of the choices that Lenny makes as a father, and indeed one might react in a very negative way and maybe in a very disgruntled and disagreeable way to some of the choices, and indeed maybe most or not all, maybe even all the choices that Lenny makes in terms of his trying to parent his two young sons. No matter how one responds to that, I think there is no doubt that this is still, at the end of the day, for all the faults that one might attribute to Lenny in terms of his various choices, this is still a story of the intimate bond between father and children. And those choices are still an expression of that bond, that intimate bond. And because it's that expression, I think we as viewers can choose to accept or reject that. But regardless of the acceptance or rejection, we can still acknowledge that this is indeed a very human and personal and emotional and indeed individualized expression of one man's, say, love and devotion to his kids in the way that he knows how, and perhaps the only way he knows how, due to his own character makeup and his own, say, values and sensibilities and things that he has to do. He is not always successful in what it is he tries to do. I mean, there are many aspects and choices that he makes that can be described as being quote unquote loser choices. But that is in no way a denial of his own humanity. That is in no way a denial of his own, say, efforts and endeavors. I mean, there's nothing that suggests that he has any feelings except for this total bond and dedication towards its kids, even as it's expressed and shown in these choices that might ultimately be questionable at the end of the day. Still, that bond is undeniable, unshakable, and indeed unbreakable. And when one realizes this, or when one is reminded by this, and indeed there are many moments in the film, many beautiful, intimate, emotional moments that remind us of this unbreakable bond between father and children. When we're reminded of this, it becomes all the more powerful, it becomes all the more emotional, and we are reminded too of how these connections to the imperfections of humanity, the imperfections of this person and the character. This is still a human story. This is still very much a human story with laughs, with comedy, with moments that will make you wonder and think, make you question, and also make you feel, sort of give one that quizzical look. Why is this happening? I can laugh out loud, or I can be shocked, or I can feel both at the same time. But ultimately, at the end of the day, they are all reflections through this prism or mirror, the reflections of this unshakable and deep emotional and resonant bond between parents and children. And indeed, too, from the children's perspective, from Sage and Frey's perspective, too, we also get that intimate, lived-in and down-to-earth sensibility. There is this way in which, there are these moments of almost like behavior or activity or words or dialogue. I don't know how you feel, but maybe you can relate, which is when I think about, say, the relationship that I have with, say, my kids. I have two kids, and we say things, or we have words, or we have dialogue, or we do little actions or little play activities or something that only we understand because we do it like on a daily basis. If we take those same words or those same activities and we show them to other people, they become like nonsense. They become like what's going on here, but they are totally understood within the context of my relationship between myself and my kids. You know what I mean? So there are those moments that are just so intimate and so directly relevant to that relationship between kids and parents. It's almost unexplainable outside of that context, that relationship context. But that's what makes them special. And one can say that there are so many of those moments here and wrapped in this film, Daddy Longlegs. You know, there's those little things about just those words exchanged, or the jokes that are made, or little exchanges about plant life, or the salamander, or something like that, and the copy machine, and all this, and the humor that's inherent in those scenes, and also some of the questionable things that are inherent in those scenes as well. Those are still part of those moments that maybe outside of the dynamic of that relationship might be somewhat maybe confusing to someone outside that relationship. But within that relationship dynamic, they are special, they are intimate, they are unique, and they are very loving indeed. And again, it's the expression of that bond, not just between father and sons, but also between sons and father. And that bond is unshakable. It's boundless. It is filled with a lot of love. It is also filled with a lot of tension. It's also filled with a lot of those moments that make for very human engagement indeed. That is what Daddy Longlegs is for me. And my experience with this film, watching it for the first time through this Criterion release, was a very powerful and emotional one. I can't say that I relate to everything that is happening in the context of this relationship between Lenny and Sage and Frey. And I can't say that I would say make the same decisions that say Lenny does as a father with regard to his kids. But that doesn't make me root for Lenny any less. That doesn't make me like this film any less. And that doesn't make me regard this film any less. On the contrary, I had such a great time with this film. I enjoyed this film thoroughly. I could be part of this world while also acknowledge that I'm separate from that world. I could be emotionally connected with these characters while also looking at these characters from the outside looking in. I could acknowledge that there are things that I don't understand, choices that they make that I don't understand, and yet still, when those emotional beats hit, they really hit. And it's that magic that the Safdie brothers and Ron Bronstein and Sage and Frey and others are able to create. It's so wonderful. In other words, they're able to create this world that has these elements that are themselves, I think, self-described as being maybe themselves unique to that world and thus foreign to me as the viewer of the film. At the same time, I am able to explore and access the world through those human moments that I think anyone can understand. And that is the magic of Josh Safdie and Benny Safdie in my eyes. And they're able to do so in a way that is not always acknowledging, say, the heroic qualities or the noble qualities of a character from a purely, say, cinematic plot aesthetic. They acknowledge a lot of the weaknesses and faults of character. They acknowledge a lot of the loser aspects of character. They acknowledge a lot of the vulnerabilities of the character. And I'm talking, say, for example, of Lenny, the father figure, the Ron Bronstein figure. They acknowledge that and they show that. And as they show that and as they acknowledge that, they are at the same time providing us with glimpses into what might be said to be authentic expressions of humanity as captured in the films of the Safdie brothers, Daddy Longlegs being one of them. So that is a very, very powerful feat indeed. And that kind of connection or connectability between viewer and spectacle, between the watcher and the film being watched, is a very powerful connection. So, as I say, I watched this film for the first time from this Criterion release. I was enthralled and I watched it many times and I was so moved. And as I say, while I cannot say that I can relate to every single thing that is happening with the characters, I could still relate on a very emotional and intuitive level. And I was thinking of my relationship with my own kids. I was then thinking of my relationship with my parents, with my father, and it became this emotional, overwhelmingly emotional experience that was also funny and witty and charming and gritty and a New York film. What a New York film this is. I enjoy this through and through thoroughly. Another great example of the Safdie brothers' world and cinematic aesthetic. You know, I must say too that I, maybe compared to other people, I am coming to the world of the Safdie brothers relatively late. I've caught up with a number of their works, such as Good Time and then Uncut Gems being examples, and now Daddy Longlegs as examples. I've caught up with their works, their feature length body of works over the last, say, a year or so. But I've been thoroughly impressed. And now with the watching of Daddy Longlegs for me, I'm becoming even more convinced that what they're speaking of is a type of truth. It's a truth that's shot through the lens of a type of gritty realism that is also connected very much so with a type of sense of their biographical life in detail, but they're also able to present it in a way that it's so accessible on a universal level. And they're also able to show the paradox of the humanity of the characters, even though, or at the same time acknowledging the faults and the weaknesses of the characters. And through that, we see the triumph and the strengths of the characters in that great, poetic, paradoxical way, while at the same time acknowledging the quote-unquote down-to-earth nature and the quote-unquote real-life situations, the high-stress situations, and being able also to laugh along the way. And that is a very brilliant combination, and it's embodied here, I would suggest, in this film, Daddy Longlegs, with the character of Lenny and his relationship with Sage and Frey. What a brilliant film this is. I was so impressed, and this made me even more of a fan of the Safdie brothers. So, Daddy Longlegs in the Criterion Collection. Thank you. The Criterion Collection has released this film, Daddy Longlegs, at spine number 1138. And this is the Blu-ray edition. And I've taken the liberty of removing this, how should I put it? This facsimile of documents and the like, sort of government-style documents or memos that form this aesthetic look that is actually the booklet for the Criterion release. This is so clever, and I'll get to this a little bit later, but I've removed this so that I could read from one of the pages which talks about the transfer. So on the last page here, it says about the transfer, Daddy Longlegs is presented in the aspect ratio of 1.78 to 1. This new digital transfer was created in 4K resolution on an Aeroscan film scanner from a 35mm digital intermediate negative. The original stereo soundtrack was remastered from the digital audio master files. Disc mastering, Pixelogic Media. So, as I say, I'm watching this film for the first time, so therefore I do not have any previous frame of reference. Now, I haven't seen this film prior to this, so I can't compare it to any previous viewing of this film because I hadn't seen it until the release of this Criterion Blu-ray. But from that vantage point, from that limited perspective, I can say that this looked and felt very... I love the look and feel of it. And I could maybe understand or make the assumption that this is meant to have a type of aesthetic or look that has a, for lack of a better phrase, a gritty New York feel to it. That is meant to be also almost like a fly on the wall, cinema verite, cinema camera aesthetic quality about it. And so there might be a sense of the roughness of the image or the look and feel, but that's fine. And the way it is presented here in this kind of great and respectful way really gave me such an all-encompassing experience. I was not distracted by anything that I identified or might have identified as any fault or flaw. On the contrary, it was totally absorbing and totally part of the moment for me. And so the visual style and presentation I felt was protected and preserved in a way that I could enjoy the film thoroughly every single time I watched it. And again, I must say that this being my first experience with this, I watched this over and over again many times prior to making this video discussion, because I not only was trying to get as much out of it as I could, but also I was really enjoying it every single time. So, and I was really taken with a lot of the emotional heartbeat that this film displays. And I think that is, again, an example or testament to the fact that the visual presentation, and indeed the sounds as well, was a really top-notch one. So it's for my money, it was a great experience in terms of the enjoyment of the visual and audio presentation for this Criterion release. All right, so now let us talk about the supplements which can be found with this particular release. And this is packed. This is really packed with a lot of supplements. So great. This is really great. What do we have here? So first we have a supplement which is described as being from the year 2022, approximately 25 minutes. It's called Family Affair, Sage, Frey, Lee, and Lee. And this is the children and mother and father, the real life children and the real life mother and father. And they're talking in these interviews, separately filmed but then edited together. They're talking in these interviews about, for example, their background. I mean, it is an artistic family in terms of the artist and musician backgrounds and careers of mother and father respectively, and then also the chance encounter that mother and children had with Josh Safdie one day, and this chance encounter and their impressions of Josh Safdie, and the words are somewhat erratic and somewhat unexpected, but this is also something that was probably something of the everyday of living in New York, because as she was saying, they were on their way to go to the subway or something like that when Josh Safdie approached them out of nowhere and made a proposal to them about how the children he thought would be a great fit for a film that he was considering. And this was at the time the film was called, or the film, the conception of the film was called Go Get Some Rosemary. So this is the chance encounter. And then there's another description of another chance encounter sometime later, and also with Benny Safdie. And so this was also the means by which parents were convinced to allow their children to appear in this work. And then also there is this discussion too about Sage and Frey themselves, and Sage being sort of the older of the two boys. He had there's an interesting show of their like homemade movies and Lego movies, this sort of artistic sensibility that he has. And then also the filmmaking aspect itself, how the filmmaking approach of the Safdie brothers was a very, from their perspective, quote unquote, a low-key affair. That's not to say anything negative, but low-key in terms of relaxed, very casual. It wasn't meant to be a high-profile shoot in any sense of that word or phrase, but rather it was meant to be shot in a very friendly manner between and among cast and crew. I think that's also reflective of the personalities and the philosophies of Josh Safdie and Benny Safdie, respectively. And it was a lot of fun. That's how it's described. The set was a lot of fun. And what was interesting, too, was the relationship between the real life boys, Sage and Frey, and the actor who portrayed their father in the film, Lenny. So this is Ronald Bronstein, or Ronnie as he's called. So the relationship and their meeting for the first time, that chemistry was really important. It had to be right. It had to work. Otherwise, the film could have failed. And so there's a description about how Ronnie, or Ronald Bronstein, met the kids for the first time, sports practice or sports match. And then he had this really great sense of humor. Ronald Bronstein's humor is very almost witty and acerbic, but also he's described as, he also is described as having this great rapport Ronald Bronstein does with children. And you can see that in the behind the scenes clips and footage that you see part of this interview or this discussion, this supplement, as well as other supplements. There's a great chemistry between the actors. It's really, really great. And Ronald Bronstein, wow, what a multifaceted performance he gives. Again, witty, acerbic, dry, and oftentimes kind of ludicrous and even cruel, but also loving and warm and kind and open. And that combination is so brilliant. And it comes through in the way in which real life actors are encountering each other and meeting each other and working with each other. That's great. And also, this is also leading into how quote unquote reality is spilling over into the film itself. There is this idea about the names of the kids being John and Will at first, but then their names in the film became Sage and Frey, which are their real names, which is because they were used to addressing each other with their real names, Sage and Frey. And there were moments too where there were some real life moments that were captured, real life moments of the performance that were captured on film as being part of the film itself. So sometimes some reactions, episodes are the actors' actual reactions, just caught on film in a way that is, again, using the cinema verite aesthetic in order to tell this story. Also, the very interesting parallel, too, is that there's a lot of, again, this spilling over of reality. And I think Leah, the mother, she speaks too about how the younger son, Frey, maybe from his perspective, was not necessarily always being able to understand what was real and what was the film. And so sometimes this kind of spilled over, especially from his young perspective. And so it's interesting to consider that, because there was also an episode that was discussed here about how there's a little bit of not a breakdown, but there was a little bit of maybe an issue that Frey had during one of the shooting scenes, and he went under the blankets. But then everyone was very much going along with it and making him the center of attention in a lovable way, and so he kind of got out of that little episode. But that's, I think, an example of where maybe the younger son, Frey, maybe there were instances where the filming was quote unquote so real at times that maybe the line was blurred between what was real and what was fiction. That is fascinating. That is absolutely fascinating. So that's, I think, a way in which we can understand that this film does have, as I say, for lack of a better phrase, the cinema verite aesthetic to tell its fictional story. Now, another thing we have to understand too is there is a biographical element between the storytelling, the story of this film, and the lives of Josh Safdie and Benny Safdie. And it's hinted at a little bit here. It's also acknowledged in some other of the supplements that we'll talk about momentarily, as well as the writings as a part of this great booklet, which is that, yes, this is meant to be also a type of biographical, or there are many elements that can be said to be biographical or autobiographical in terms of Josh Safdie and Benny Safdie's own childhood and their own relationship with their parents, specifically their father, Lenny being their father in a manner of speaking. So yes, so that connection with quote unquote reality, or the real life nature of the biographical or autobiographical, is also very much part of the importance or the effect of this film. Also, there is some reaction to some of the scenes. Like there's a scene, I don't want to get into too much detail, involving sleeping medication, and how this is applied in a situation that may be said to be quite questionable, very questionable indeed. And so real life parents were wondering whether this scene was really necessary, but Josh and Benny Safdie apparently really argued in favor of the inclusion of that scene. And so indeed it's part of the film as we see it now. So that's an interesting reaction in terms of how real life parents react to stuff that they see on film, even though it's acknowledged as being a purely fictionalized thing, and it was shot in a way that was, of course, not putting the kids in any real harm. Also, there's a discussion too about Cannes Film Festival, and also how in many ways this film can be regarded as it's a film that stands on its own legs, daddy long legs, but also it's a film that could be said to be in a way a kind of thesis statement film, for the works of Josh Safdie and Benny Safdie, in terms of films that they'll make later, such as Uncut Gems, etc. So, very interesting, fascinating, and wonderful supplement here. Again, this is Family Affair. This is approximately 25 minutes. Continuing on with the supplements discussion, we have next The Universe is Out There, Josh and Benny Safdie. And this is a kind of documentary in and also a discussion of the works of Josh and Benny Safdie, excuse me. This is from 2017. This is from Michael Chaikin for the Criterion channel. And this was around the time of the filming and making of the film Good Time. This is totaling 54 minutes. But what this is not only a behind the scenes look at the making of Good Time and some of the scenes and on location behind the scenes footage, but this is also a direct discussion with Josh and Benny Safdie and their approach to cinema, their backgrounds, their choices, their working relationship, their personal relationship with each other, and also their intimate circle of partners and collaborators, and also some discussions of their works. For example, Heaven Knows What, Good Time, John's Gone, The Pleasure of Being Robbed, Daddy Longlegs, etc. So so it's a great documentary, and this was my first time watching this documentary as well. So I learned so much from this. For example, I learned about the relationship, or the father, the relationship with their father, Alberto Safdie, who's also interviewed here, and there is in that relationship discussion of the film Daddy Longlegs, and also an understanding that the story of Daddy Longlegs with Lenny and Sage and Frey is also the story of Alberto Safdie and Josh and Benny Safdie. And in that way, there's also discussion here about how a father, a real life father, reacted to the news about the film, watching the film, and also how this film, Daddy Longlegs, there's a really fascinating mentioning of Daddy Longlegs and the film Kramer versus Kramer, which is, the more I think about it, the more my mind gets blown. And so, yes, this is a really, really great anecdote, or one of the reasons why this documentary, this supplement, really worked for me so thoroughly. And there's also some discussion here, Ronald Bronstein, and also the meeting and the background behind their collaboration. Ronald Bronstein and his work with the Safdie brothers is very important. Especially, or for example, in the context of this film, Daddy Longlegs, they also talk about their introduction to Ronald Bronstein, or one of the ways they were introduced through the film by Ronald Bronstein, which is also in the Criterion collection in another release, which is called Frownland. And other details. There's some interesting details about hustling and the con, and the idea of trying and failing, the characters that are quote unquote losers, but there's a sense of nobility in the sense that these losers are still trying. Fail as they might, there's a great beauty and nobility in the act of trying. And if that's the case, you can see in so many of the films of the Safdie brothers, including Daddy Longlegs, this idea of trying and failing. But there is something of the beautiful and the poetic in showing the act of trying. Fail as they may, they still try. So what a great documentary this is. The Universe is Out There. I enjoyed it very much. So please check this out as well. This is approximately 54 minutes. Continuing on with the discussion of the supplements, we have next supplement, which is called Supervised Visit. And this is approximately a minute and 39 seconds. And this is test footage. It's with Sage and Frey, Ronaldo, and Ronald Bronstein. And it's described as being, part of the test footage to sort of test out the on-screen chemistry between these actors, these performers. And so it's a very charming snippet, or a look into, or window into what ended up being one of the foundational elements of the film Daddy Longlegs, that being the relationship between Lenny and Sage and Frey. So it's a great insight and look into this particular aspect. Again, supervised visit, test footage. Then continuing on, we have a section which is called deleted scenes. We have about, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 scenes in total. You can choose to watch the scenes one at a time, or you can choose to watch them all at once. All at once, it totals approximately 16 minutes. So you can watch these scenes, and again, they provide further episodes, because one of the ways one can describe this film is it has an episodic structure. It's not a sort of strict A leads to B, leads to C, leads to D in that strict sort of plot development way, but rather these are maybe episodes in the lives of these characters as expressed in these various, say, exchanges. And here are more of those episodes in the form of these deleted scenes. So they have their titles as well. I don't want to reveal the titles here, but you can look at the titles when you see the menu. And again, you can choose to watch them all in one sitting, or you can choose to watch them individually, whatever you prefer. They are all really excellent and brilliant. And again, they're more insight into this lovely relationship between father and children, so, and also some of the other characters that they meet along the way as well. So this is the deleted scene section. This is approximately 16 minutes. And that's not all, because next we have a second stop from Jupiter. And this is the making of Daddy Longlegs, and this is described as being from 2011. Becky Loxani, and this is narrated by Leah Singer, and who is the mother of Sage and Frey. This is approximately 12 minutes, and much like the first supplement that we find in this disc, this is talking about the showing some footage, making of on location footage while they're shooting Daddy Longlegs, the building, the loft, or the apartment, both inside and outside on the roof, as well as inside in the room, etc. And also some narration with the real life mother. Meeting Josh Safdie. Again, this is the story that is also told in the earlier supplement. And we see some of the footage of the brothers in the room. We hear a little bit of the Beatles song Fool on the Hill as they're unfolding the couch bed. And how this film, or the filming of the film, was like an alternate reality for a lot of the performers. It was so real in one aspect, but it was also, of course, telling a story because it was a fiction. But there were the blurring of the lines between reality and fiction. And again, here's an opportunity to talk about the younger of the children, Frey, and how maybe for him, he wasn't able always to understand what was real and what was not real. So it was that much of a blurring of the lines between reality and fiction. So great stuff. Again, also fascinating for so many reasons, one of which being you actually see some of the shooting of the scenes, or the preparation of the scenes in a really great way. So please check this out if you can. I enjoyed it very much. This is second stop from Jupiter in the making of the film Daddy Longlegs, approximately 12 minutes. And then moving on, we have something which is called CNN Breaking. Benny Safdie boards plane to Portugal. And this is approximately 38 seconds. And I understand this is a promo, or like a little commercial or promo or trailer or something. A promo, let's say, for the screening, IFC Center screening. So very clever, very funny, and very witty, and almost it's perplexing too. Like, what is this? It makes me want to find out more about this, whatever this is. And so very funny, and then also it has the CNN logo and all the music that's part of that. I think the European version. So very clever. So this is a little almost short film in and of itself, short promo, less than a minute. Next, we have why this movie exists, and this movie exists is part of the is in parentheses, and this is approximately 2 minutes. This is also a promo. This features Benny Safdie, essentially on the street, New York, trying to make the case for the movie with the, I don't know what you call it. He was wearing the boards the poster boards on his front and the back of his person, on the train outside. There's a moment too. Yeah, it's very funny. I think it's meant to suggest he's actually out there, and real life people are reacting to this kind of outward show of promotion for this film. Again, very interesting, and it's also itself a promotional material for the film, I understand. So this is approximately 2 minutes. Very funny indeed. But the laughs don't end there, because then we have a short film from 2008. There's Nothing You Can Do. This is approximately 3 minutes, and this is a story that is featuring a lot of the actors who appear in Daddy Longlegs, I understand, and it's a story set on a bus, set in a New York crowded bus. Let me put it that way, and it is very human, very understandable and relatable, and it's so funny. I mean, it's a situation that were I a bystander on that bus and I were witnessing this, I would probably think, oh, this is something that, while it's noticeable, it's something that it's probably something out of the everyday, or possibly out of the everyday. So, but at the same time, it is very noticeable and very funny, and also very funny in a kind of a complicated way, which I think is, for me, an interesting way to describe the Safdie brothers' humor. It's very funny in a complicated way. So, very intriguing short film, or short work. Again, There's Nothing You Can Do, approximately 3 minutes. Very funny. And then there's another very funny supplement, which is called Talk Show. This is Sam Lysenko, and this is from 2010, approximately 10 minutes. And this is showing also the collaboration and work between the Safdie brothers and also Red Bucket Films, and also featuring Ronald Bronstein and others, where he's talking about, among other things, or he's being asked about his work Frownland, and his reaction is, well, watch this supplement Talk Show if you haven't already. It's so funny. It is so funny. Yeah, I don't want to say too much. There is a choice of music. There's a live band, because it's a kind of like a talk show, and there's a live band playing whenever new guests arrive. You know how talk shows are. When a guest is introduced, there's a band playing and playing some music. There is a choice of music that is played for one of the guests because of the guest's name. And the choice of music is so, when I heard this, I was laughing out loud. I couldn't control myself. I was laughing so hard. And then you have Ronald Bronstein there, who's just talking, or not talking, as the case may be, with regard to cinema and the art and Frownland. So very, very funny stuff. I enjoyed this so much. Talk show. This episode of Talk Show from 2010, approximately 10 minutes. And then we have the supplements, which are rounding themselves out with the inclusion of a trailer, a great trailer. So this is packed. This is really packed, and I enjoyed every second of it, my dear friends. The supplement section for Daddy Longlegs. And now let's look at the presentation and the cover art design choices. Very interesting cover art design choices, both in terms of the cover art here and the back, and also this idea of what's being seen on the TV or the TV screen versus who is seeing it. And so I like this too. This is the shot. Excuse me, let me remove the disc here, so we can get a look at what the inside shot looks there. And this is great too. We also see this as being part of the menu of Daddy Longlegs when you put the disc in the player. So really, really great stuff. It's I think very unique and very very much part of the quote unquote realism aesthetic, while also acknowledging the fiction. Now, that realism aesthetic, while also acknowledging the fiction, is also embodied so perfectly with this insert. This is very cool. This is very cool indeed. So this insert is bound by one staple in the corner, and you see here, evaluation of parenting skills of Leonard Sokol, Oren S. Lang, PhD. And so this is child and adolescent psychological clinicians. So this is meant to be a type of facsimile of a kind of memo of the assessment of the parenting skills of the father character. So it's very, very much a kind of a clever way into this world of the parent-children relationship that is part of the film Daddy Longlegs. So very, very clever indeed. I enjoyed this very much. And so it's kind of like being part of the world itself. And then it goes into this artistic rendering here from these pages 5, 6, 7, and 8. Very clever, again, blurring the line between reality and fiction all the way down to the Criterion booklet. Very clever indeed, because then what we get is on page 9, it says Volume 2 Essay, Presto Magic. Stéphane Delorme, this is the essay about Daddy Longlegs, translated from the French by Nicholas Elliott. Wow, wow, this is great. So now we have the essay which is in the form of this sort of typewritten presentation. And it's a great essay. Once again, like with all the essays from the Criterion releases, my strong suggestion is watch the film first, and then you can read the essay. For me, I watched the film again for the first time with this release, and then after I did so, I went to the essay, but not the other way around. So, and I was very happy for that choice, because it does go into specific details of the film, but it does in a way that is providing a lot of room for various readings of the film. I mean, there's, for example, a type of dream logic analysis approach, or one of the approaches of the essay. Fascinating stuff, and the like. So I learned so much from this. Loved it, loved it. Presto Magic. This is the essay. So please check this out if you can. Very strongly recommend it. I love this too. This aesthetic of the facsimile of actual documents is included going forward, and then you go into some more pictures and stills here following the essay that we just referred to, and then we have with a lot of pictures and a lot of captions under them, which is really great. And then we have this. Looks like a. It's like a memo or letter. It's called Go Get Some Rosemary, LLC, right here on page 23. And this is regarding the filter of memory, an interview with Josh and Benny Safdie. And this is like, again, a facsimile of like a letter or a cover letter from an attorney. But then what this is the opening page, or the introduction to, looks like here, it's not a letter, but it's a cover page to, it looks like a brief written by an attorney. But what this is in fact the interview with Josh and Benny Safdie about the film Daddy Longlegs, referred to under the title Go Get Some Rosemary, from April 2009. Wow! Again, I love the look and aesthetic of this, the attorney's brief, but this is actually Josh and Benny Safdie's interview. And so great too, this interview is. I love this. Again, I was learning so much about this, about how this had a very strong autobiographical bent to it, how Josh Safdie and Benny Safdie were showing and discussing about their approach to working with, say, children, and having a film that is very involved in terms of the filming process and shooting, and working with children, also working with Ronald Bronstein, Ronnie Bronstein, as he's referred to here, and the like. Great interview. Oh, I love this interview from start to finish. Immensely so. Wonderful. And I love the look and presentation of the attorney's brief. Genius. Absolutely genius. So please check this out if you can. Really wonderful. And then that's the leaf. That's the booklet here. I love this. I love it for its content. I love it because I learned so much. And I love it for its look. This is one of the best in terms of the inserts, Criterion releases. I love this very much. So this is, in a nutshell, my reaction to the release Daddy Longlegs from the Criterion Collection. I was thoroughly impressed. I am thoroughly impressed. And wow, what a film this is, as released by the Criterion Collection here on this Blu-ray. Daddy Longlegs. Okay, my dear friends, so that's it for now. And so until we meet again, please be happy and healthy and well. And please keep on watching a lot of great, great movies. Thank you so much, as always, for your time. I very, very much appreciate it. Stay strong, stay safe, and cheers.